Hopefully that is better. It is me catching the microphone with my finger. So I have, I always try and move it out of the way. Anyway, there we go. Hopefully it's back. And what I was just saying was it has been a bit of a difficult week in terms of watching Bitcoin's price action, in terms of watching how the altcoins have reacted. And we're going to dive into the charting as quick as we can. But I just want to spend a tiny amount of time at the beginning just trying to reassure people of perhaps where we are, in not only in the cycle, but in what we were talking about in terms of price action, where this sort of fits in and how we can move around. So Bitcoin 3-day time frame right here, we can see, Tuesday we talked about the rejection off that 117,000, and the likely destination was where we find price action at the moment. I sort of said 109,600. We have actually gone below that one. Let's just see how this thing wicks at the end. But that support line has been a historically good level of support for this ranging period that we've had since beginning of July. I'll kind of cover a lot of the other ones as we go through it, but I will just bring BitTensor up because it's the one that everyone is obviously so interested in. And we've lost the Gandalf line 315. We've kind of lost the base of this support here, of the yellow line, at around about 305. I just want to wait until the candle actually closes here so we can kind of get a real feel for where it actually sits below this. But we are getting pretty close to the wick that was made at the sort of middle of June, around about 286. And as I've said before, there's quite a bit of room to go below that one. Doesn't mean that I've sold anything. Matter of fact, I haven't sold any of the BitTensor yet, and I'll kind of explain why. But just to kind of get sentiment out of the way, we can see on CoinMarketCap, bloodbath for the last week. Fear and greed's down at 32. Bearing in mind, we're supposed to be in the parabolic bull phase right now, certainly in that step towards the last leg. Amazing to think that we're actually in the fear side of things, but a week's worth of selling is going to do that for you. You actually go into the fear and greed index here. We're actually at 28, 44 yesterday, down to 28. And we can kind of see, if I just put it on the 1 year, we haven't seen these lows since the tariffs, since the introduction of the tariffs and that move down to 75,000 that we experienced there. So an odd kind of place for us to be in terms of fear and sentiment, but I don't think that is undeserved. I think sentiment is at a rock bottom. This cycle is different, and it's mainly because of altcoins just not having the kick that people are expecting to have right now. So when we get these pullbacks, we see these sharp drops in fear and greed. You know what I'm going to say though, when the market is fearful, it's time to buy. And it doesn't mean that is the end of the rot. When we look at sort of where we were in March and April, we had further falling to go, but we look back on that time 6 months ago as an ideal opportunity to buy. And if we can just try and take that a little bit further, and we go on to Bitcoin weekly time frame at the moment, it is on the linear chart but what I've got here is the fear and greed index down the bottom. Now, it's not an exact replica of this one, because this one, as I said, is at 28. And here we're currently printing at 46, but it is on the weekly time frame. So we're going to print lower than that next week when it sort of registers. In fact, I wonder what would happen if I do drop onto the daily. Just bear with me. Okay, the daily has dropped down to 28. So it is based on that fear and greed. Apologies, I just said it. I'm going to keep it on the weekly though, but just note that it is down at this level down here. And what I've kind of got drawn on the chart is I'm just trying to give you that, not necessarily reassurance, but that sort of confirmation that this is not the end of the world as such. So if you just focus down at the bottom, let me just get rid of this for a second. There we go, so you can kind of see the screen a little bit better. So if you just look at the fear and greed, you can see these white lines are going up and through. And what I've kind of done is every time we've dipped into the fear zone, so that's 26 to 48, to sort of try to mark up what happened with price. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but I'll try and explain those as we go through. But generally, when we hit this level, it actually signifies that we are at the end of whatever falling there is. And what we have seen from it, even beginning of the month, we came down here, we went from 107 to 118, 10% increase. June, we were down at 100, went all the way up to, ultimately up to 125, but in that move up to 122. I'll come back and talk about the tariffs in March in a moment. We go back sort of this time last year in October, the start of the Halloween rally, October, and also leading into the elections. But, we dipped down. We did dip down into this fear through September, which is historically a bad month, before then having that huge move up. And this one, massive, 58,000 to, 108,000, so almost 2x our position. Again, we had a period of ranging, which I'll go over on another slide or chart in a moment. And we can have a look where we came back. So October 2023, October again, we had a bad September, drove fear down back into this zone, although it hadn't really climbed out of it that much. But then what happened? We've sort of kick-started that huge run up from, 27,000 to 74,000. Again, I appreciate news sentiment and ETFs launching and all that helps, but the point is that the market was fearful beforehand, and that has continued to happen. Now, I accept that when we get into 2022, that kind of falls by the wayside, but we were in a bear market then, and it's not quite the same. But we can see that it's because it's on the linear, it doesn't show up as well. But we can see that this has happened even in the previous kind of build-up phase for the 2021. Cycle. So there's definitely, nervousness around, and potentially rightly so. It is unnerving to see your portfolio collapse away, as it sometimes does. But just remember that it's likely engineered to be moved down this way, as we talk about, market makers are starting to fill the bag as prices are going down. So we will see reversals. We'll look at vectors a little bit later on. Now, as for these other sections where we did see it dip and stay within the fear and sometimes into the extreme fear zones, I accept we were ranging, but even these spikes up and then sort of the move back down, we're still talking, 51,000 to 68,000, still 15, nearly 25% increase before another 25% down and then a 20% increase. So we're still seeing these big movements in and around here, but ultimately it ranged in that and then started the period through. And I get to this point here, if I can just zoom in a little bit and just say, I get it, let's just take the last 2 weeks if I can find my price range tool, which I can't. So far, the week's not ended. We are down 8%. 8%, that's nothing compared to some of these moves we had down here. And okay, we are down 12% from its all-time high, but that's not the lowest we've actually been. We've actually been down since its all-time high to pretty much 107,000, a 14% drop. So this week feels bad because everyone got euphoric about rate cuts and everything else, but the reality of it was we weren't particularly too comfortable with the rate cuts being a good sign, and we're just seeing that move back down. And what's it doing? It's taken, September, even with, let me just refresh it just to make sure. But you can see, even whilst I was cleaning up that, we're still a green month right now. Rare for September's to be that way. And okay, we were up at 8%, a week or so ago, but we're still in the green as it currently stands. We actually have to fall all the way down to 107,200 for us to break that level. And so until we do that, I would call 1% probably just a neutral kind of game, but ultimately it would go down as a green month there, helping to maybe produce this September month from being historically quite bad to trying to evening it out. But don't forget, October is just around the corner. October, the greatest month for crypto on record. And the reason we get such large figures in October is because September has a drawdown beforehand, which then ultimately gets bought back up because the fear is so high. Retail miss out, and the market makers have their bag. And just to have a look on our sort of main, bull market sentiment indicator, the 50 EMA. It's still at 98, so we're about 10% above it. Right now, we're back on the 20 EMA, which isn't 100% guaranteed to always hold, but it is generally is a good support for us. So ultimately there, we've got, I don't want to say nothing to worry about, but in the big picture, we're not necessarily saying that the peak is in, and not until we see some movement down past this. That's just how I'm judging it anyway. And if we have a look on the monthly time frame, we can draw. It's not the cleanest, I accept, but all the way back from January 23, so pretty much the base of the the bull market this time round, we can kind of see we've had these, moves up, consolidate, move up, consolidate back, move up, consolidate back, move up. We may well just be consolidating back. And as we currently sit right now at sort of 109,000, this could go all the way down to 99,000, which is where the 50 EMA is. That's if it happens this month. So we're only a few days away from a new candle printing on the monthly, and then we're talking about 105 kind of level. But we have seen movements back down to this, which then normally result in a reset and a spring back up to the next level. And so that's kind of where we're sitting and we're looking. You may argue there's not that many touch points there, but we've got to remind ourselves on the monthly time frame, and that has actually proven to be a pretty good support line through this. Just because we talked about it on Tuesday, I mean, that new moon printing then actually turned out to be pretty darn good as well. Anyone who actually took that round about one the day, it would have been 116,000. We've moved quite nicely, sort of 7% down from there. Again, the moon cycle is not necessarily confirming how long it's going to fall, but to try and offer some sort of reassurance, when we went through the data, if you remember, full moons leading to the market reversal and a move up had a lot better hit rate than the new moons. Well, we're approximately, it's about a 15-day spread. Remember, it's 29.5 days for the full cycle. Halfway through that, then it's about 15 days as best I can on the daily time frame. And that's going to take us to the 6th of October. So if you're believing in the moon cycles, which I'm still not saying necessarily that I am, a full moon is going to print in and around, it will print on the 6th of October, which historically has led to reversals and upticks within the market. So if that's what you need to hold your hope onto and start staring at your tea leaves, then we are only 10 days away from that coming through. How things could fall between now and then, unfortunately, is anyone's guess. But I'd certainly be looking, I know on the 3-day time frame we're looking at currently where we sit, but if we were to lose that, then I'd be wanting to see the low that was made in September and August, sort of that 107,000 kind of level. It's a bit of support back in July on that as well. Right, let's just get into some charting then whilst we're here. So Bitcoin daily time frame. I must have not pressed save because I don't have any of my drawings in any of the charts anymore. So we kind of know where we are, but it does actually give us a fresh set of eyes to look at some of these. And the first thing that should sort of strike you all, I think anyway, is the vector candles, because we've got two rather large red vector candles, neither of which have been fully claimed yet. And that kind of gives us at least some sort of roadmap as to where we can see price heading back. And for me, we'll have a look at where we may reverse, but I can't not see these getting fully reclaimed. I'll probably just, maybe hedge my bets and say, even in the short term, taking this candle out here and reclaiming, let me get rid of this, and sort of get my brush, reclaiming up to this level. So that's sort of 113,500. Strong red moves like that typically do get reclaimed. And whilst I accept that you'll be saying, oh, Harry, there's a red up here, but just look what the preceding candle was to that. We had this green, which would have left that green vector candle there, and then it was immediately reversed upon. So that one is just a remnant of it taking out that green there. We always know we'll leave this one up here to see how well that can be reclaimed in a time frame for the next move up, whenever that may be. So that's sort of the first thing that kind of springs to my mind as we're looking at stuff. The next, unfortunately, is, given we're on the daily time frame, it's the 50 EMA. We have lost that 50 EMA. The 10 and the 20 are not only that, but are fanning out in a way that we don't really like to see. From an EMA point of view, there is a potential saving grace with the 200 EMA, but that's down at 106,200, which, is another 2 or 3% fall from here. That could likely equate to maybe another 10% fall across the altcoin market. So that could be quite a difficult element for our portfolios to have to manage. I'm just trying to see, and then the 800 EMA, we're not even going to look at that, down at below 80k. So nothing for us to really concern ourselves with right now. In terms of Cycle counts though, and sort of moves up. We talked about that potentially being an M formation. This being drop one, move back up. This potentially the start of drop two. That is worrying in a sense that, you know, it would suggest that we need to get below 107,000 just for it to actually be a genuine drop two. But that could well tie in with a move down to this here before then. That move back up and retaking those vector zones within a period of consolidation. They're moving a bit fast, that one maybe for the daily time frame, so it might be worth us having a look at where that sits on the 4 hour. And the only other thing really I suppose to look at, this is from a long time ago, but we can have a look from a fib. We'll have to do wick to wick, I reckon. It's such a long period, but I'm just trying to see if there's anything from that. I mean, we have just gone and lost that level today, but I wouldn't say it's a particularly great level. We have previously lost it down there. I'm just wondering if we maybe moving up from this one bit better in terms of we can see how this has interacted with these levels before. We had that interaction. I think it's probably a better one going from middle of June. So yeah, we can see these moves up, interactions, particularly in and around September, how it's just played between the 382 and the 618. And then likewise, we reject off the 236, come back down, hit the 0.5 up to 382. And then yesterday, 0.5 didn't even hit any breaks for us. And so there is a potential opportunity for a further fall down to maybe that, 107, 707 kind of level. Let's just call it 108,000. I'll give it maybe we even get a wick through there, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see that level there be ticked before we get some sort of opportunity for a turnaround. We'll just get rid of all of that now, so we can look down to the 4 hour time frame, and we'll see what we can see down on that. Okay, I mean, there's the vectors are still in a very similar zones to what we were kind of talking about before, so nothing really to worry about there. We have lost the 800 EMA, which we did do at the beginning of September, but we were able to sort of stick in and around it, get a W formation from it and take those moves up. And I think that's kind of what we really need to see now. We start losing these. I mean, I don't have anything higher than an 800 EMA to take a look at. It's now, I suppose, how we're going to see some of these cross. We did see a golden cross there for those, or death cross, sorry, for those of you that buy into it, which kind of, I mean, the move had already happened, but once the death cross happened, we start to see the vector moves and that aggressive move down past the 800 EMA. I can hope and wish and pray that we see a similar pattern to that, but I don't think that the market's going to listen to that. I just think we need to note that really, we'll just keep that low down there. Really, the concern right now is that we just keep that level there. So that 107 to 700, even on the 4 hour, I think for me, we want to see that bounce before that comes into play. In terms of cycle counts on the 4 hour, we had a bit of trouble last week trying to determine where it was. We could see the W, see the rise 1, see the rise 2, see the rise 3, but we couldn't actually get that M formation. But assuming that there's an M in there somewhere, we've had that drop 1, consolidated sideways, drop 2, pull back, drop 3. There could actually be an argument that we are in a drop 3. And that we've just done in the left-hand side of that, and we kind of need that to happen on that side. We're running into the weekend, so, I mean, we know anything can happen there, but with Bitcoin running on its own, assuming that we kind of at least end the markets positive today, then, we could use that weekend to build on that momentum. If it's a bloodbath by the end of the day, then it worries me what the weekend may also bring, given there's nothing else there to offer us any support. But that's where we are. So this could well be, well, it's certainly, shall we say, drop 3. Whether or not drop 3 is finished, I'm kind of going from there. The only thing that maybe you could disagree with that is if you said this was the M. So let me get rid of that. And I'll do that pull that up here. Should just draw it better. That was the M. This second side's a bit of a loop, and then you drop 1 and we're in drop 2. There's an argument, I suppose, that could be had for that. But I'm going to try and be a little optimistic and suggest that no, this is probably drop 3. Just because we're coiling up here doesn't mean the drop 3 is finished. We need to see that bounce. We want to see a bounce, I mean, given we got the 200, the 10, the 20, I'd like to see it get into eating these vector candles, then likely another fall before a move back up. I won't bother with the hourly. I think we'll just leave that one there. It might get a bit confusing. Let's have a look at Ethereum, which, we prayed and we hoped and we wished that Ethereum was going to retest the 50 EMA all the way back at 3,600. It didn't. A few days ago, it finally retested it at 4,200. However, so much pent up aggression on the move on the way back up that it just burst straight through that on the daily. I mean, again, vector candles have been forming, which, we can hold our hat back to, but I don't like it how this candle is. It's currently 12 hours to go on it. Put it back on here. But not looking in the best position for if that was a daily close, and I appreciate 12 hours to go. Something to definitely keep your eye on, but as the market's moving down, there's definitely some sell pressure on any attempts to buy this back up. And so I suppose, what's the next level that we can, considerably need to look at? Well, we've got this support here, one of the shoulders on the way back up, tying in, although ever so slightly above now, the 200 EMA, but we're just with the speed and the aggression that came down. Not to mention, I think this is something that people kind of select not to look at, is nobody complained at the speed and the aggressiveness of how this climbed, and other altcoins like Link. But then when we see aggressive move back down, we try and just deny it's going to happen just because, that's not what we want to see. But we are seeing an aggressive move back down. 50 EMA didn't offer us any support. The cloud saw the bounce and then it was a rejection from that. And as I say, that candle's not looking great. Now on the daily, there is no vectors. We have to actually get below this for the vectors. But if we drop it down onto the 4 hour, we'll continue the discussion with the vectors first. But there's a clear vector right here for us to take, and that is dropping all the way down to 3,700, 800 EMA down at 3,600. I can now easily see that there. Then maybe we get that sort of that cushion and that buy. But just given the trap liquidity there, I can see that move. We've got plenty to run back up to when sentiment changes, and we can get excited about that. But until that sentiment changes, I think we just need to be conscious of what is below us. And again, the EMA is not exactly presenting a great picture, especially that 10 EMA. It's acting as an incredible element of resistance right now for any moves that are going back up. But I'm just trying to see, what is that, 4,200, the 50 EMA. I mean, I would expect, even if we're going to continue down, we don't look at the RSI particularly, but let me just get a clean chart and throw it on. But I imagine the RSI on a lot of these, let's get rid of that, is going to be incredibly oversold. Do I even have the RSI here? Might have been blind. I am. Okay. Yeah, it should have been there somewhere. So, daily time frame with Bitcoin. Sorry, I know we jumped back. I wanted to do this on ETH, but it's pretty low. When we get onto Ethereum, you can kind of see we're actually already on the boundary of oversold. It's just been a complete sell-off. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of pullback, not just in Ethereum, but across the altcoins, because they have taken a beating compared to what Bitcoin has done. And Bitcoin's down, a couple of percent every day for the last few days now. So yeah, something to certainly think that we may get some respite there. Don't just think we've found that bottom, bounces back up, great, but we want to then be able to start building off them, whether you want to use fib levels, whether you want to use EMAs or what have you. You can go from there. But if we just clear this up a little bit and maybe try and throw a fib on, see what we can see. I mean, where do you take it from? It was such a strong move up, wasn't it? I mean, now, when you go back onto the daily and you really just appreciate, where we were at the beginning of July, right back down at 2,200. Has Ethereum really done that bad? Not really. That 3,600 level we talked about on the 4 hour, tying in again with the 382 on the daily. So certainly adding some confidence to that kind of a level. We've put this back on. I know it's looking messy now, and I apologize for that, but you can kind of see This is the 382. There's the 800 EMA vector through there. There's definitely a zone of interest that I'd be considering. I'll draw it across all three things. So you got the vector, you got the EMA, you got the fib heading down there. Right, bit tensor it is. So we kind of talked about how this has gone. You know my views on it. It's not shown much strength, and we were kind of working on the Gandalf line at 315. We have lost that. We've stuck under it as well. Whereas previous times that we've lost it, we've recovered. We're now building that. And for me, although I'm not particularly liking the position, we don't just knee-jerk reaction when the move has already happened. We wait to see what happens next. And for me, that next level has to be at around about 290, 287, as you see here, which we're not far away from at all, I accept. But we have seen sort of bounces and recoveries from that previously. So to sell now would just be an error in judgment, just because you don't know where that is ultimately going to move. But as I said, we don't have much going on once we lose that from just a support and resistance level. We maybe got a line. Oops, delete that. We maybe got a line on the daily in and around here, sort of where it was kind of like the culmination of these two shoulders for the inverted head and shoulders that we had down there. So that's sort of like 222, and after that daily time frame, you hate to say it, I mean, okay, maybe you've got a second one there, but 183 and 167. Let's just focus on this 287 at the moment, see something from it. But that gap there, I think, needs to be filled, and I'll just leave these lines on as we sort of start to go through, and you can kind of see how big the void now is, because this move up back in April, so back out of the tariffs from 230, 240, all the way up, there was just no vectors left behind. And so we don't have anything until we get back down to sub 240. And so that's why this is just such an important level. What made us turn around on that exact point there, I don't necessarily know, but it's our last bastion of help right now for us in terms of trying to turn that around. I will stand by the fact that we have got vectors up here, which I imagine will likely get taken. They will come together quite nicely. All of those could be taken and still not make a new higher high. So, there's that to be had. And, if we actually do get back up into this zone here and we see some failure, then maybe there's an opportunity for another side step. But I didn't take this one. I wasn't really looking at it, to be fair. It happened, and we can't chase it when it happens. We just have to let it play out now and just where we're going. And I go back to, although, the charting doesn't look great, I just take you back to this sentiment here. We're down at 28. Okay, it's going to be fearful. People are going to be thinking about the worst, and that's fine. But the speed at which they turn back round is not to be underestimated. We've gone down, we've hit that level, bang. Within a matter of weeks, we have cleared the previous high that we were worried about, and we're back in sort of the greed and extreme greed kind of levels. So, don't throw the baby in the bathwater, whatever the saying is, out of the window just because of where that company sits. In terms of some other alts, we look at Solana. I mean, Solana it's definitely, I was going to say it's had a bad time. It has had a bad time. Of course it has. It was 250 not so long ago. It's lost nearly 25% in the space of a week. But actually, when you look at that, you just look at it from where it was April, down at 93. Is it really that bad? Yes, we've had aggressive moves up where we're going to see aggressive pullbacks. Aggressive move up, aggressive pullback, aggressive move up, aggressive pullback, aggressive move up. Okay, aggressive move up, aggressive pullback here. And so, whenever we find support, and we'll have a look at that in a moment, assuming that we're still in that bull cycle, we're probably going to see another aggressive move back up. That's what it's done for the last 6 months. Aggressive moves generally have aggressive pullbacks. And as long as the pullback doesn't, go lower than the previous low of a pullback, then we're just in a snakingly upwards market with actually some pretty good fundamentals or technicals behind it. We have lost the 50 EMA before, and we got caught on the 200 EMA. So for those of you that are waiting for your meme coins to move or whatever, we've lost the 50. We're really now looking at this level here, which is 180, shall we say. There's no vectors until much lower on the daily time frame, but the 200 as quarters before. Granted, okay, it stayed below for a day, but that's where it is. We drop it down to the 4 hour. I can say actually the move down. Yes, we had an aggressive start to it, but it's kind of been sort of just slowly bleeding down as we move back down. Whether that is seller exhaustion and we're just sort of like, just clearing out the order book, but we're not seeing too many more aggressive ones being replacing it or following the price down, I don't know. But again, 800 EMA around about 190 would be a level that I'd be interested in monitoring. And then if we can try, do maybe wick to wick to start off with, just because it's such a long distance on the 4 hour. That 800 EMA is bang on with this 618. So there's an argument to be said that given that we've lost some of these previous levels, and I don't think these have worked too badly on the way up. 5 didn't really hold very well, but it did all right at support previously. That the 618 could be a good level for it to look at. 190 might be the place for you to either look at an entry or think, thank God, the end has happened. We've done Tau, went over cows or any of these, you're in those. People talking about Aster, the new Hyperliquid, sponsored or done via Binance, which had a hell of a ride up. It's only been going for a few days now. There's no real vectors on the 4 hour even, and it's too early to kind of tell. You get it on the hourly, and we can kind of see, we've had that strong move up. We've had a nice rounding bottom, another move up. It looks like we're having a bit of a rounded bottom again. And if you are interested in trying to sort of, make a play, perhaps just wait to see it break the 50 EMA at 195 before maybe making some entry there. Its previous highs 244, so still a good uptake even if it's to get to that, but it is the new one on the block right now, and it could well be worth a play if you're able to be patient with it. BNB itself, after making its all-time high, we've now seen that correction. Put it on the daily for you. This is about as old. This move is about as old as Aster and the hype around Aster. So whether or not that kind of led it there, but we did have a pretty clear indicator of what was happening with that stopping vector candle at the top, and now we're just sort of starting to clear out all of these green vector candles. We're making our own red ones, I accept, but at the moment we're just clearing these ones out. We've got, what's that, 920 down to clear that bottom one. Maybe we get as low as the 50 EMA, wick down and take out this other one at about 885. I'm not ruling that out at all. I think that's probably a logical position for that to sort of end up going down towards. Bitcoin dominance on the rise. So Bitcoin dominance is, the thing that's really messing with us is although Bitcoin's going down, altcoins are now going down faster. Bitcoin dominance is allowing to climb back up. Our saving grace is that we do have it hitting the 50 EMA at the moment. So maybe we start to see altcoins retake control. But again, given how fast the likes of BNB, Sol, Ethereum, and Chainlink have all fallen, XRP too, it's no wonder that the Bitcoin dominance of the market share has been able to climb, because those other ones are heavy hitters. But what did we have here? An argument for a drop 1 consolidation, drop 2 maybe consolidation, and then just wait for that drop 3 final bit of alt season to take place. Oops. There we go. But yeah, a move back here kind of makes sense with a 50 EMA, and it kind of got a little bit higher. Was it 26? So 59.26. Not quite that 60% level where we were kind of sort of seeing price action back in February. I say price action, dominance action. But the other thing to note is, do we see some sort of double bottom there off support, and it's just stalling at the 50 EMA, but it's just waiting for that move to come back up. Could well do. I did talk about thinking Bitcoin's going to have its next run before altcoins do, and I still think that's probably the case, in my opinion. I think that's probably it. We've been rattling on for 35 minutes there in terms of kind of charting it. What I would say is yesterday, all the markets, not just Bitcoin, had some trouble. Now, the NASDAQ has managed to recover. some of that. So, well done to it. Maybe that'll be reflected when the market's open. That continues, and then that falls off within there. But we can see that it's had an equally bad fall this week. So has the S&P. And yeah, okay, they are moving. Markets aren't open yet, so just double checking. I think most of the stocks, actually Apple up. Let's get it on the daily. Otherwise we just coin still can't clear that gap. Circle. I mean, rejection off the 50 EMA looks to be coming back down. I think this one is going to go against the market just because of the IPO hype. That is my opinion on it. That's why I haven't bought anything yet. I don't know why I'm spelling this out, but I've started, so I'll finish. Google, yeah, bit of a pullback this week with the rest. Meta, similar. Microsoft, the same. MicroStrategy, yeah, having those falls, lost that 200 EMA, that cluster of EMAs now might make that difficult for it to push back through. I've seen articles about, high frequency trading bots trying to short MicroStrategy. Well, we'll just wait and see on that one. Nvidia kind of just holding its own. It's had a bit of a pullback, but it did recently make an all-time high. Bijan, you wanted me to talk about Wyckoffs, and I haven't. Right, okay. I need to find a town chart that's clear. Let's just clear all of that. Question is, was it on the weekly? I can't remember which one you sent me. Was it? I think it was actually on the daily. I think it was from here, if I remember correctly. And we've had that sort of accumulation phase, making a high, and then sort of failed highs. I can't remember all the terms of Wyckoff right now. And we kind of had a false bottom before a second move up, continuing it. But yeah, because the weeks were having it. And the question is, I suppose what you're saying is, do we now see a distribution phase? And by distribution phase, we mean an actual move back down to the levels where we started at. I haven't looked into it. I know I said I was going to look into it today. Forgive me for that. I completely forgot. I will promise you, make a note to look into it properly and talk about it on Tuesday. You have my word. But yeah, sorry about that one. I forgot. In terms of everything else, well, let's just have a look at Ethereum BTC actually before we go, because there's an interesting thing here in terms of. Let me hide some of this stuff because you don't actually need all of this on whilst we have this conversation. So this was Ethereum BTC, and the talk was alt season is around the corner. We're breaking out with this long-term trend line, and we did. And then we were kind of just, Koboing back off it. It was fine, building some support, but actually this week we've lost it. And that's the worry, isn't it? Is that actually we've drawn this wrong the whole time. And it should have been more like, oops, I don't know where it's going to be, but a bit more like this. And so we just got to watch out for that one. I'd say, given how I treat the weekly time frame with the 50 EMA for Bitcoin, you need a couple of weeks underneath it before we're going to get concerned. If it just starts, such a long time, it could just meander here for a little bit more and then go up. That's fine. We'll still say that line's there or thereabouts. It's if we start seeing in the next couple of weeks, we're really starting re-attacking this level, and God forbid this level down here, then we can't say that actually that was a rejection, a full-on rejection. So definitely something to have a look at there. But again, I stand by. Just Ethereum has fallen hard compared to the rest. I don't know if that's reflected in sell-offs. So yeah, we had a little bit, $250 million yesterday in Bitcoin, although remember, 3 solid weeks of buying now for BlackRock, so always a good sign. And Ethereum here, another $250 million yesterday, but about $500 million this week in Ethereum sell-offs. And not a single purchase this entire week. Everyone's been either selling or not buying at all. So remember we had that run in August. That seems to have died off quite nicely. Nicely is not quite the right term, but quite thoroughly now. Anyway, I think that's kind of it. Let's say I will definitely go over that Wyckoff you talked about on Tuesday. End of the month on Tuesday as well. So September's gone, October time. Talking about cycle counts, talking about new moons, all of that, it's all sort of culminating at the beginning of October. So just ride with it a few more days. We'll roll into October. We'll kind of see how the early parts of October lay out before we make any rash decisions on where we need to go on that. Enjoy your weekend if you can. I'll be about in Discord as I always am. And other than that, I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.